Hello everyone. So today we're continuing with Java and we're going to be looking at selection. More specifically, the if, else statement. Now there is another type of selection in Java called the case of statement, but we'll be looking at that in another video. So to start off with, what is selection? So basically, selection is an element of coding you can add to your programs which will allow choices to happen. So if one thing happens, your program will take a different route than if something else happens. So by definition, you could have a minimum of 2 choices, but you can have a maximum of as many as you need. So I've created a new project and I've added a scanner in here, but we're not going to use it yet, so I'm just going to comment it out, and we're just going to write something a little bit more simple to start off with. So the first thing I want to do is create an integer variable, and I'm just going to call it number, and I'm just going to give it the value of 12. Okay, just a random value there. And then I'm going to start my if statement. To start an if statement in Java, you just use the keyword if. Okay, and then after you've done that, you need to open brackets, and inside of these brackets is going to be the statement that you are checking. Okay, so if this statement is true, you're going to run the if statement code. If it's false, you're not. All right, so in this case, I'm going to say if number is greater than 10, do the following. And the code that you want to run goes inside of the curly parentheses, and when you press return there, you'll see that Eclipse closes it for me. All right, so just remember, when you're writing your exam by hand, you need to close it off. And then in here, I just write the code that I want to run if this statement is true. So maybe I could just write your number is bigger than 10. Okay, and then I can run this, and you can see 12 is my number has the value 12, which is bigger than 10, so that should run. Okay, because this statement is true. But let's just change this value to 9, which is smaller than 10, and I'll run it again. And you can see it looks like nothing's happening down here in the console, but it is doing what I've asked it to do. It's ran this code, and this code is false, so it hasn't ran this, but there's nothing else to run. So I'm going to put on here an else. So the else will run if everything else isn't true. Okay, so if everything else in your if statement is false, the else will run to finish it all off. Okay, so I can just say, let's go, your number is smaller than 10. Okay, now if I run this, you'll see it says your number is smaller than 10. But what if I change this number to 10? So 10 number is equal to 10 now, and this statement says if number is greater than. So if I run this and it says your number is smaller than 10, well, 10 is not smaller than 10. 10 is the same as 10. So I'm going to need something else in here to give me another option. And if I want more options than 2, I just add an else if statement. Okay, and the else if statement runs the same as the if statement. I open the brackets and I can say maybe number is equal to 10. Remember, 2 equal signs to compare value, 1 equal sign assigns. Then I open my curly braces and I write the code I want to run in here. And I can just write your number is the same as 10. Okay, so now if I run this, you'll see it says your number is the same as 10. So let's have a quick recap before we move on. So I set a variable up, yeah, that's quite simple, and then I wrote this line of code. Now, if what is in these brackets is true, this line of code will run. If what is in these brackets is not true, it will go down to the next section of code. In this case, it's an else if statement, and it will look at this code, and if this is true, it will run this code here. If it's not true, it will go down to the next one. So in our case here, we have an else statement. And when an if statement gets to an else, it will just run it, because when you get to an else, it means that you've did all of your options, and anything else that is possible is what you want to go in here. Okay, so basically anything else in the universe. Okay, and in this case, by definition, if you're not over 10 and you're not the same as 10, you're going to be under 10. Okay, all right, let's move on. So I do have here just a quick recap of the comparison operators. Double equals to compare, remember we talked about that. If you're comparing a string, we do dot equals, then we have greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and not equal to at the end here. Now, what I want to look at before we start is if we want to add and or functions to our statement. So remember, we have the AND gate and the OR gate, which we looked at when we did logic gates. And if I want an if statement to run if something and something else happens, so two explicit things, I use the double AND sign. Okay, if I want to run an if statement, if it will run if something or something else happens, so a choice, not explicit. Oh, sorry, I'll wait, that goes off. We use the double bar. Okay, so let's have a look at an example of this. I'm just going to get rid of this. Okay, and then I'm going to uncomment my scanner. Get rid of that because that's from my if statement. And let's tidy this up a bit. So let's make an output here to tell a user to please enter a number between 10 and 20. Okay, then we're going to put a scanner in, so we'll call it, it's going to be an integer, and we'll just call it number, and we'll make it equal to user input dot next int. So if you can't remember or you're not sure about scanners, please go back and look at the scanner video. All right, this user input is referring to this user input here, which I set up before the video started. So if you can't remember scanners, please look back in the scanner video. And now we're going to start our if statement. So I'm going to say if, and then open my brackets because this is where the statement's going to go, and I'm going to say number is greater than, I just thought I'd misspelled it there for a second. If number is greater than, that's 10, and number is less than 20, do the following. Let's just say your number is within range. Okay, then I can just put an else on here and just say your number is out of range. Okay, so if I run this and it's asking me to input a number, and if I put 11, for example, that's within the range, it's going to say your number is within range. Although I made a typo mistake there. Number is within range. And then let's try this again. We can put 19, and that is still within range. Let's try this again. I will put 9. Your number is out of range, and I'll try it again, and I'll put 21 and put this is out of range. Okay, you'll probably notice I missed 10 and 20 out, and I'm going to show you now. If I put 10, right, it's going to tell me I'm out of range. Okay, now if I want to have my number include 10 and include 20, I need to use the equal to. Okay, so now if I run this and I put 10, you'll see it's within range. And just to finish off, if I put 20, you'll see it's within range. Okay, so now I just want to finish off. Yeah, I think I can squeeze it into this video. Just want to finish off by having an embedded loop, an embedded if statement, okay, because these are quite common and it can be a little bit confusing, so we'll look at that. I'm going to keep my scanner because I'm going to use it, okay, and then I'm going to have an output that is going to ask the user for their username. Please enter your name. Okay, and now I'm going to use an if statement and say if what have I got? Excuse me, I need to create my scanner first, sorry. So I'm going to have string here. So string, and then let's just call it username, like that. And I'm going to make it equal to user input dot next line. Remember, next line because we're using a string. And now I'm going to start my statement. So I'm going to say if, and then open brackets, username is equal. So remember, it's a string, so I'm going to say dot equal. You can see Eclipse has predicted what I want, but it's also predicted that I want it to be the same as username, and I don't, so I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to put in speech marks. Let's just have Bob. Okay, so if username dot equals is equal to Bob, do the following. Okay, so press return, and then I'm just going to give a quick output message to say maybe hello plus username plus please enter password. Okay then, and obviously I'm going to have another scanner here, so it's going to be string again, and let's just call this password and make it equal to user input dot next line, and then we're going to be using a second if statement. Now look, this if statement belongs inside of this if statement because there is the brackets. Okay, so it's going inside of it because this is an embedded if statement. So now I can say if password dot equals again, and we don't want to equal the password, we'll make a password up. We can just say maybe password 123. All right, not a very good password, but then we can say like this, and then use an output to just say welcome. Okay, then we can use an else here and say put wrong password. And then here we're going to make sure we're out of the else and make sure we're out of this if statement, okay, because this is the else for this if statement, so make sure we're out of those brackets, and we're going to say else, put brackets, and say what should I can say wrong username. Okay, so if I run this, well, that's my username. If I say Bob, it will say hello Bob, enter your password, and what I say the password was, I said password 123, didn't I? Password 123, it will say welcome. Okay, if I run this again and I call myself, I don't know, Ben, it will say wrong user and stop. If I run it again and I get Bob correct, and then I say maybe hello 123 instead of password 123, it will say wrong password. Okay, so I'm using an embedded if statement, and this if statement will never happen if this line of code is not true. Okay, do want to just add one more line of code in here. It's nothing to do with if statements, just to make this a stronger program. So if I say username and I make it equals to user name dot to, no, not you, to lowercase, you can see it's there. And all this will do is if someone puts or writes in Bob, but they write a capital B because they're using correct grammar, this will allow it to still go on, okay? Whereas if I didn't have this, or if I comment this out and I run this again, if I wrote Bob like that, it's going to say wrong user because it's looking for Bob like that, okay? Of course, you could have an and in there and say and or username is equal to Bob with a capital B, but I find this line of code is a bit more efficient, and it will just change whatever anyone's put into here into lowercase, okay? And if you can't remember about string manipulation, you can go back and look at that video, okay? So that is if statements, okay, with the embedded if statement at the end to help you out. And I'll see you in the next one, where I think we're going to be looking at for loops, okay? I'll see you then.